Uh, a very good afternoon to all. Now, if we look into the progress of our, teaching learning process of this postgraduate diploma in sustainability science, we have completed most of the courses, beginning from MSD 011, sustainability science. Now we have reached to the fourth block of MSD 016, means 6 courses. As you know, we have 7 courses. Of that, we have about to complete 6 courses in this week. And I'm sure most of you must have taken the benefit of or utilize the way we are providing teaching learning process in a very innovative way. And you know, even if we are providing online support system in this way, also we are using two-way interactive session as compared to others like Facebook and YouTube. So we also very happy to have an interactive session, a two-way interactive session with all our learners. So today is after looking into the basic structure, infrastructure concept, and other issues which in our block 6. In block 4, what in this block 4, the objective of the block 4 is, if you look in the study material, self-learning material, it is also clearly mentioned that the objective of this block is to understand what are the what is it doing? Wait a minute. Okay, now is it enough? No. Who has done this? Okay, I'm starting because someone was trying to present from their learners, maybe because by mistake must have done it. But anyway, I'm starting. So okay, now no one is there. Okay. So the objective, as I mentioned you, that the objective of this particular block is we have looked into different principles, concept on sustainability. It's different, from different perspective, from ecological perspective, from from economic perspective, from social perspective, from institutional perspective. And we learned that whatever we're talking about the sustainability, we cannot look those different dimensions in a separate way. That has to go in a holistic way. So whenever we understand, we try to implement those principles, we need to understand those concepts in interrelation. So in this blog, we have also talked about the need for sustainable infrastructure development and what some of the lesson, what we learned from the failure of, we cannot say that failure, the limitation or limitation, or there was maybe gap of effective implementation of green revolution that invited us for an green revolution as one of the important principles of infrastructure development, means livelihood infrastructure development in our country, which are basically based on agriculture, right? So in this block, we have looked into some of the existing models which was widely practiced by different community across the country. And we are taking only 3 important models looking into the 3 basic agro-ecosystem of India. We can find out a number of models, number of projects, but in this particular courses, we cannot fit everything over here. But here we are only bringing few of those important key success stories. So looking into that, first and foremost important to understand is when we are talking about planning, project, or implementation. And first, we plan out in a very effective way. We try to find out different process and how to implement it. That is why we need to understand the basic of models. Okay, so when we here we are going to touch upon that's what are the model and what are its basic components, what are the different types of models in general models. Then when we look into from sustainable development point of view, what are the basic general sustainable development models. That is the concept, principle of those, not exactly that model, what are the principle of sustainable development models in general. As we know that when we talk about the issues of sustainability and we are trying to understand the concept of sustainable development, concept of sustainable development, we have looked into different dimensions and different principle, how it is interrelated. Looking from that basic principle, you can find out 3 or 4 important models in academic literature or in literature of planning and development across the globe. There are 3 pillar model: capital stock model, prism model, and egg model. Let us look into what is model. And when we see this particular term model, we feel that it's a very technical word. But if you really look into and if you simplify that, then it is exactly, it is not, it is not a new term. Because from morning to evening, you are applying model. So a model is simplified representation of reality. So we apply modeling, I mentioned you, in each of life, beginning from our day-to-day activities to long-term decision of life. Because when you started in the day, you plan your day accordingly. Okay, today the weather is in this way, what I have to do, how to reach the office, then coming from the office, what type of, what I have to do. And these are the processes you plan accordingly. You plan accordingly. And before you go to bed also, you started to think of what is my tomorrow plans and how to make it successfully. This is called a model. Okay. And even if you look into very, in depth, for example, if you say every season have different clothes to wear. For example, in winter, we use woolen cloth. In summer, we use, thin cloths, and so on. In the rainy season, what type of clothes we are using, what type of assets we are using. So this is a kind of model which every day we are, implementing. Even, for example, when you cross the road, we look into, we have it already, the model is already implemented by policy and the planning, whatever we can say, by law, that there should be zebra crossing in specified places. This is this is a kind of model to avoid accident, and these are some of the examples which we are using every day. This is called a model. So in short, a model can give us quantification of result, extrapolation of result to different situation, future trend. So using, I mean, when we use this thing, when you say that a model can give us quantification of result, what I mentioned, every day we are doing this. When you are expanding your money in your household item, when you are, I mean, spending your money for your child's growth, your child's this career. So you expect something, and accordingly you put your hard work, you put your money, and you put your I mean, your children put their effort. So that's called how we can see that it's a model. Okay, then what are the basic components of model? And so we indicated that, for example, if winter is coming, if I want my children wants to become, I mean, an IS officer and engineer, then what kind of education you are going to give, and in winter, what kind of clothes I have to wear. So accordingly you plan. So first and foremost components we look into result, means output. So model have the component. First component is output, then input, then scope, and application, right? These are the basic components of model. Today we are going to talk about only the basic principle of model. We are not going to look into technicality of specialized model. So that's what I indicated, as everybody knows that inputs are always based on the output we want to get. So output is the first priority, or first parameters, or first input. We can say output is the first input of a model. Okay, so output is information to be produced. That means, as I mentioned, in output, what you expect out of your planning, out of your, I mean, out of your planning, out of your developing the way you want to do, that is first input of model. Then accordingly you input different information, different component, or you, for example, you started to look into when you go out for example, nowadays what we did, for example, in the winter, we first look into what is the weather condition today. So accordingly you put that, you collect those information from the internet or from newspaper, and accordingly you see what are the expected this weather in the evening. Accordingly, when you go out from your home, you wear the clothes accordingly. So you gather that information. That is called, that is input as information. To get that output of wearing accordingly, based on that you wear the clothes to go out of your, I mean, home. Then scope, the applicability of the model, where it has to be applied, applicability of model. Then last one, application. Now you have output in your mind. Accordingly, you have input. Then that input, after that you understand what are the scope of that model, applicability of that model. Then again, after developing that model, now you find out what are the other areas where you can apply that model. Means to explain how it works and how it can be replicated to others. That's called application part. Okay. So the model can be developed in three basic stages. What is the one is development, as I mentioned, that development is you need to bring questions and as a concept to develop those models. Then you need to analyze, that means evaluation, analyze the issues, analyze the way you want to bring. Okay. Then after that, after developing that process or developing that model concept, or after developing all those components, then you need to apply in particular place or particular in a particular purpose. So these are three important basic stages in developing a model. Then again, models are actually built for a specific purpose. For example, that I told you that depending upon the, for example, you want to see in the example of this wearing the cloth. So that is for a specific purpose. So based on a specific purpose, it can be divided into how we are using and for what purpose. So based on that, model can be of conceptual type. This include empirical model, which it is very easily find out when you Google it out. You will find out empirical model. What is empirical model? I will not go into details. This is a basic, terminology which we need to understand. That's why I'm only bringing out here. Then conceptual, physically based or mixed model. Then integration type, that includes analytical, numerical, or mixed model. Then mathematical type, that is deterministic or stochastic or mixed. Then spatial type, semi-distributed, distribution, that distributed GIS to the 3D or mixed. Then temporal type, based on time, if it is static or it is dynamic, or it is going to be static and dynamic together. So depending upon, we can look the different types of model. But when we study about the sustainability and sustainable development, it's better to classify the models into quantitative models, pictorial visualization models, conceptual models, standardizing models, and physical models, right? Because when we talk about sustainability and sustainable development, sometimes we look into in terms of quantity. So some models, they look into quantitative perspective. For example, econometric, the computer simulation, database, mathematical, statistical. If you want to calculate the sustainability of an agricultural field in that time, or economic value of some particular, conservation practices in that time, we need to quantify, or way of model that quantify the output. Then pictorial visualization model, band diagram, graphic representation, pictures in drawing to educate. For example, you want to educate some people or some group of stakeholders, and to make them very easy way of the way you are developing that for sustainable development, to explain that way in a very simple way, to make them convinced, irrespective of stakeholders. The pictorial visualization models are very easy to convince them. Then conceptual model, because most of the concept, for example, if you want to find out a specific model for a specific purpose in that time, first you need to develop a concept. So that kind of models or theories that are categorized under conceptual model. Then standardizing models like indicator, benchmark values, and target. Here, users try to recall, remember what we talk about indicators in the first course, MS-011. So when we talk about indicators, it's kind of standardizing the parameters. So in those kind of indicators, benchmark values and targets, they are under the category of standardizing models. Then physical models. Most of the physical models are in a smaller or larger vision of object system that allows visualization for further investigation. Right. These are some of the models which we classified for studying the sustainability and sustainable development to make it easily understand. Okay. Then, what is quantitative model? Quantitative models are generally discipline-based. For example, economic, that we mentioned it, that there's a kind of economic model, like when you want to quantify the things and to understand the outputs in terms of quantity. So sometimes, the name itself indicate that, and it's really talk the holistic perspective of sustainability. Then pictorial model are highly powerful theory reach to the audience. That's I mentioned it. That conceptual model talks about the link of any activities and its impact. For example, human population pressure to the natural resources. Just a very simple concept. You explain very easily, and it can crosses boundaries of many disciplines to give a clear understanding on the purpose of concept. When you explain human population pressure to the natural resources, in that concept, you can bring a number of issues. Okay, if the population is increasing, the natural resource, the quantity of natural resource will be depleted. Because of that, livelihood will be impact. While livelihood impact will be there, and social issues will be there. There are a number of social issues will be there. So it crosses the boundaries of discipline also. Okay. When we talk about standardizing models, it tries to evaluate the performance of a system by introducing some parameters, targets, long-term goal, by maintaining the records and processing data. That's why when you want to have an effective model or effective intervention plan, you can use the model is a kind of, you can also use the term, and development practice, they can also use the term, that's intervention plan or project. First, we need to standardize the thing. So to understand the performance. So those, in that time, we need to identify some of the targets, what are our goals, etc., etc. Right. So they are under category of standardizing model. Then physical models are generally either local or component specific, but are participatory approach and interdisciplinary perspective, as we discussed that, like urban design, recreation, then habitat, etc. But the limitation with physical model is it's a small part of sustainability system, that is only global or regional sustainability. Small part of that. You cannot make a big physical models which entirely reflect about the sustainability of a system. Right? Let us look into what are the sustainable development models. When we have an understanding of the basic theory and concept of what are the models, and what are the different types of model, what are the components. So we have an understanding on that. Now let us understand what are the existing very simple and generally understandable models available, widely accepted across the globe in the literature, academic literature, and in the literature of policy and planning. This can be looked into, those models are three-pillar model, capital stock model, the prism model, and egg model. What is three-pillar model? When you talk about the three-pillars model, we know that the basic pillar of sustainable development is social, environment, economy. Sometimes it's also interpreted as a dimension of sustainable development. So when you develop a model that we talk about the different components, in that time you have to understand the interrelation and between or among these three important pillars, that is social, environment, and economy. But if you look into the need for achieving the principle, ethical principle behind sustainable development or sustainability is, the moral value. So when you talk about from moral point of view, because when we talk about the sustainability in ancient time, or traditionally it was in our traditional culture, or in custom, where you will find out the sustainability, the value of sustainability, whatever we're talking about, the principle of sustainable development and sustainability is already there, that was basically based on moral ethics. So these three pillars, what we're talking about, environmental pillar, social pillar, or economic pillars, these three pillars or dimension can be looked into when you talk about, here, this economic pillar. That economic pillar is that satisfy human needs. Okay, only satisfying human needs. And when we talk about social pillars, the social dimension, when you develop those kind of when you develop, we have to understand, developing a model, we have to understand all these things, because when we talk about social dimension, we have to understand social equity has to be ensured. Then when we talk about environmental dimension or environmental pillars, means we have to respect the environmental limits. So when you develop any of the model, it may be conceptual, it may be numerical, it may be any of the models what we have discussed above, then you have to keep all this in your mind. Then another model which is proposed by World Bank in 1994, you will find out that called capital stock model, because when you talk about the banking system, they talk about stock. So in that, they identify three important component. They are ecological capital, human capital, and social capital. When you talk about ecological capital, you know, we are repeatedly discussing about that ecological capital is biodiversity, landscape, mineral resources, means natural resources, right? When you talk about human social capital, that human capital is our individual health. Then social capital means social security, the social relation, then, you know, freedom, justice, equality of opportunity and the peace. Because without having equality of livelihood, opportunity and the peace, then it will not be able to achieve your sustainable development. So the equation which was proposed by World Bank is capital stock of sustainable development is equal to summation of these three important stock, that is ecological capital stock, human and social capital stock. But the limitation in this particular model is, if you look into this particular equation, you will find out that if one equation has less value and other one component has less value, for example, if we said that capital stock of the environment, this value is less, and the capital stock of the economy is high, then it will say, okay, capital stock of sustainable development is high. So this is some limitation, and sometimes we call this particular model a weak model. Then, as you know, in the processes, so we have learned in the different courses, in the previous courses, we learned that when we talk about the different pillars of sustainable dimension of sustainable development, that in addition to three dimensions, institution plays an important role. So here, the model proposed by Sternberg in this PRISM model, he identified four important dimensions. There are environmental dimension, social dimension, economic dimension, institutional dimension. Because the reason behind this is, you know, when you want to maintain the balance of three important dimensions, that is social, environment, economic dimension, that is a need. There is a need for a institutional medium to, govern these three systems. So institutional dimension is very important. Whenever you want to bring the successful implementation of any model, you want to talk about the participation, which is the basic important process of bringing effective implementation of achieving sustainable development. So institutions play an important role. So the fourth pillar of institutional dimension is also very important. So another model which is proposed by IUCN in 1994 is egg of sustainability. Here you will see the relation between ecosystem, means natural resources, and the people is like egg and a yolk of an this albumin in the yolk, white and the yolk of an egg. So here, in this particular model, you will see that the egg of sustainability, this particular model illustrates relations between people and ecosystem, one circle inside another. As I mentioned you, this is just like the human is just like yolk of an egg, right? But in that case also, this also implied that the one is entirely depend on other, because without a white part, you cannot say that as egg, and without if your yolk is not, quality of the yolk is not good, then also you will not say that this quality of this particular egg is good. So both the components are interrelated, and the both white and yolk should be good. So in the same way, a society is well and sustainable only both people in the ecosystem are well. And if you look into this relation, you may have a good environment and natural resources stop. But if society is not good and health of your society is not good, then there is no point of sustainable livelihood or sustainable model. So these are interrelated. So social economic development can only take place if the environment offers necessary resources. In the same way, if the environment is giving necessary resources, right, like raw material, space for new production, sites and jobs, but in the same time, the social structure is not such a way that which are easily acceptable into that, or which are not easily, which are not easily. One is availability. They are do not have given. They are not giving the this. They are not giving the permission, or there is some limitation in accessing that particular resources, then there is no availability. We can say that there is no availability of that particular raw material. Then those raw material, those natural resources be acceptable, then affordable. So the point is that, so both the health, health of the environment and health of the society are interrelated with each other. So when you talk about the sustainable development, when we are learning from the beginning of the course one, two important concepts. We're focusing on these two important concepts in a holistic way. One is when you talk about sustainable development, the other is we use the term sustainable or sustainability. And sometimes you feel that these terms are same. No, they are two different characteristics of the complex heterogeneous system representing society and the environment. So you should know that at the end of whatever we learned till now, up to course 5, we talk about the different dimension of sustainability and sustainable dimension of sustainable development. Then in course 6, we started to talk about the importance of sustainable infrastructure in those processes. When you learn it, when you study it, you will, whatever our misunderstanding was that sustainable development and sustainability is the same, but in fact it is not. Sustainable development is a process, and sustainability is the goal of sustainable development. So we have to keep all these in our mind to develop or a model, or to propose any of the concept for developing a model. So the need is to measure this process, means sustainable development and its goal. That is why we need models, or we are modeling. So as I mentioned you, and you already read in our study material also, I would like to let us have a quick look into some of the available models in India. One is basically based on Himalayan region and coastal communities, cultural landscape models. Here you will find out in that unit, in this blog, how this highly sensitive ecosystem like Himalayan region, Andaman and Nicobar, and it plays especially Himalayan, this region, fragile ecosystem. They are very sensitive and also plays an important role in maintaining the climate and the weather of our country. So we need to, when we are implementing sustainable development models in this particular region or particular state of Himalayan region, we need to be very careful. So we have already presented that in our study material, that it will be very easily to understand that. Then coastal communities model, India have large shoreline communities states, beginning from West Bengal to Andhra Pradesh, then you come down to Tamil Nadu, Kerala, and up to Gujarat. We have a long coastal area, and the coastal communities also plays an important role in Indian, GDP. So in that also we need to understand what kind of sustainable development projects needs to be implemented. So when we identify, we understand that things, we have to identify specific models which are highly applicable, or if, which will be successfully implemented in that area. Then cultural landscape model, you know, India has diversity in geographical structure or landform, and diversity social structure or cultural characteristic. So some of the areas like tribal dominated areas like northeastern India, central part of India, and Jharkhand, and they have different culture. So we need to understand those culture. So among that, we have picked one of the important cultural landscape-based model, livelihood model of Nagaland, which was successfully implemented in 1970s, since 1970s, and now also it is effectively implementing. So in this sustainable, let us look into sustainable integrated farming. One is integrated farming system model of MSSRF. Sometimes it is proposed by MS Swaminathan Research Foundation. Then cultural landscape model, based model that is effectively proposed and implement by NAPP, Nagaland Environment Protection Economic Development. In fact, this NAPP program, like in IF integrated farming system in the coastal area, the basic, innovator, we can say innovator, and the organization who take an important role is MS Swaminathan Research Foundation. Here, NAPP is an important role in implementing this project, and fortunately in NAPP, some of the academic like Professor P.S. Ramakrishnan play an important role in convincing the funding organization in 1970s to fund those projects and to carry forward those projects by taking different funds from external, foreign funding agency, and as well as from Indian government, to carry forward those successful model across that state. So what are the, let us have a quick look into what are the basic component of those different models. One of that is sustainable integrated farming system, which is very common in this coastal area. You know, when if you look into that, you will find out that in any of the particular livelihood system, we will find out agroforestry is also in their farming system. We will find out sorry, agroforestry also. They practice agroforestry. In the same time, they have livestock population that entirely depend on agroforestry, then aquaculture, and then crop cultivation, right? In these four basic components, you will find out in most of the integrated farming system that gives, for example, when you have agroforestry, all this component. Okay, when you have agroforestry, from agroforestry, you will enhance your economy. All this component will have enhance your economy. From agroforestry, you will get fodder, you will get firewood, you will get, sometimes you will get timber, right? And those fodder will be used by livestock. The livestock's manure, then gober from the livestock can be used as a manure from crop. Then crop, that byproduct of crops, and byproduct of agroforestry, and byproduct of livestock also useful in aquaculture. So this is a closed cycle. So in that way, there, you can say the closed bioeconomic system exists in this integrated farming system that brings environment, okay, and sometimes support, sometimes need that educate, that gives education to underprivileged group because of the enhancement in their economy, and that also bring equity and employment. So this is the basic structure of sustainable integrated farming system conceptual model, okay. Then when we talk about NAPP, I'm going to explain this particular model principle, which is proposed by Professor P.S. Ramakrishnan, which he implemented long time back in 1970s, but with some modification or some update, it was published in 2000. So when you look into those of highly sensitive area, including the Himalayan ecosystem, we will find out that the agro-ecosystem over there is, subsistent. So most of the farmers, they have their own land in a very plot basis, very, they will not own they will not own the land in terms of hectare or acre. They will have own a small area of cropping area. Then if you look into, so they know the value of that particular plot level agro ecosystem. When we understand that plot level agro ecosystem, then you will understand how much social response, because they are the society, that particular household, they own only small part of that plot. Okay, so there is a close relation between your social box of societal response to that agro ecosystem. When you started to understand the social response, the societal response, societal responsibility of maintaining that particular plot, then you will understand that plot is also is related with your forest system, because there is a relation between, as we know in the principle, when we are talking about a principle or relation between the flow of ecosystem from forest to agriculture in the mountain area, you will find out that relation. So to preserve the particular piece of your agricultural system plot, then you need to maintain the forest system. So in that brings the agroforest, the perception of agriculture and forest linkages, right? When you maintain the agroforest linkages, what it gives? It gives your soil fertility, nutrient cycling, etc., etc. Then it's a direct impact on societal perception of species in ecosystem. Then they have their traditional knowledge of which kind of species give soil fertility and play an important role in nutrient cycling. What does it mean? It means, if you look in technical term, ecological boxes, it is ecosystem function. So in this process, now your understanding of ecology, your understanding of environment has another interpretation or another domain, that's human. Now human has become an integrated part of your ecosystem. When then human become, your settlement has become the integrated part of your ecosystem of that particular cropland and the forest. Now you need to understand that in landscape level. That is what we talk about landscape ecology in the beginning of our course. Landscape ecology, what? Landscape ecology is the ecological function that passes or that is related from one ecosystem to another ecosystem. Like here, we'll see the ecosystem functioning of relation of ecosystem function of forest ecosystem and that plots of agriculture. So ecological, then that landscape bring an ecological landscape. There is a culture exists. The culture, the particular culture, they have the culture, okay, our landscape should be in this structure. For example, if you go into the mountain part of, especially in Himalayan area, you will find out that in one season, they have left some part of lower part or higher part of their agricultural land for grazing. In another season, they will leave it. So that is a cultural practice that still that exactly exists in that Zoom cultivation. So when you maintain that cultural landscape, automatically maintain your biophysical quality. So automatically that indicate the sustainability of your biophysical component. When you have that strong biophysical component, then your social institutional indicators, means your social institutional sustainability is also very strong. So that gives if you look into that, you must have find out whatever we talk about coast tree. Also, we have pani panchayat, then forest panchayat. In that way, in every village, they have village authority. In case of traditional Jum, they have village authority in others. In that context, by understanding from plot level to the ecological landscape level, now you are able to maintain your social box and ecological box, its relation and the health of that particular ecosystem and production that gives you a sustainable livelihood. When you give a sustainable livelihood in your local level, then different local level sustainable livelihood makes a regional sustainable regional system. When you have a sustainable different model of sustainable livelihood, you bring a long-term sustainable regional development. This is how traditional knowledge, landscape-based cultural based landscape model works. So we need to understand, when you develop different kind of sustainable development models to achieve your sustainability goal of sustainability, you have to understand the basic principle of model. What kind of model, depending upon the target group you are going to convince, you are going to explain, you have to understand, you have to develop in that way, you have to implement, you have to understand depending upon the situation. So this is what I want to share with you.